Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the situation in Germany, and I've been in Leeds now for 10 years, so I'm a little bit distant from Germany by now. So I've got the advantage probably that not a lot of people here in the room know the details of the German methodology, so they can't contradict me or say you're wrong. What I'm basing my talk on is a study we did under the leadership of Tom, an international comparison of appraisal methodologies. Was it 2 years ago now? And I've updated this because when we did this study, the new appraisal methodology for Germany was under development and I wasn't allowed to report on it. So now we've got the new methodology, I can actually report on the proposals. What I thought before I go into the details, I'd say a little bit about the planning in Germany because it's quite different from the UK. And then I'll present the proposed methodology for the next federal infrastructure plan, then give some conclusions, some ideas why I thought maybe this is where we can learn lessons in particular for the UK. Now, to know more about the planning is having some background about the German system. So Germany is a federal country, so a lot of decisions are not at the national level but at federal state level. And it has a system of tiered responsibilities. So the national level, similar to the EU and its member states, national level and the states have all their responsibilities, and it follows the principle of subsidiarity. So everything that can be decided at the state level should be decided there. But there are general more national interests, and there is where the federal government comes in. The other principle is that the states are cooperative. They're not competitive, like in the US. So they can't raise their own taxes and compete with each other. They are cooperative. Now, what impact has that on transport planning? Well, first of all, the national government has the responsibility to plan federal networks. But the administration of, for example, the road networks and the implementation of the policies at the state level. The national government doesn't have any influence on airport planning. It does have influence on the rail networks, but in cooperation with the railway companies and the federal states. And it is responsible for the inland waterways networks. So the inland waterways still play a stronger role than in the UK. So we have got the Rhine and Danube, which are still used very heavily as waterways, and other canals. So as we see, for example, for the road example, we've got the federal government's Ministry of Transport, and then the state governments, their regional councils, where actually the operational things about roads happen, and we have lower administrative bodies. But that also means there's not one appraisal methodology. There are loads of appraisal methodologies for every level. So we've got the appraisal method for the federal infrastructure plan, which the federal government does. Then we've got recommendations for appraisal for the state level and local level. And we have got an appraisal method for regional and local public transport investments. They're often developed by the same people. So the appraisal research community isn't that big, so they're all involved in them. So quite often what happens is one of them is modernized and the others follow, and they are at different stages, but relatively similar. So the most recent one now is the draft, which is available for appraising the 2050 Federal Infrastructure Plan. That's why I'm going to concentrate on that one. The thing is that the draft is available. You can also download it from the internet in German. And I just called someone in Berlin from the University of Berlin who are a bit closer to the thing and asked, do you know if it's actually going to be applied? And he said, well, it has been developed in stakeholder consultation so long, we assume that with 95% probability this is how it's going to be applied. So what I'm saying today is not 100% certain, but let's say 95. So what's the Federal Transport Infrastructure Plan? Well, it's an overall plan of the national transport network, so road, rail, inland waterways, with the aim to identify whether there is a requirement or need for new projects, and a prioritization where the federal funding goes to first. Unlike UK, as far as I understand, there is a legal act that follows. Once the requirement for infrastructure project has been determined, it is put into a statutory act, which means that for this corridor, for example, other planning is difficult, because there is a kind of legal act which says in this corridor there should be a transport project. Whether or not that is ever realized is a different question. I'll come to that later. So the process is basically, you've got the Federal Transport Infrastructure Plan, which is developed at the executive level in the ministry. It goes to the Parliament, which decides the upgrading acts and the law, which says here are requirements for infrastructure projects. This then goes back to the executive level, which decides on 5-year plans to actually give the funding for this federal infrastructure plan. Again, these are decided at parliamentary level. And then we go to lower levels here of planning and realization, where the detailed planning, environmental impact assessment, etc., follow. This is often not at the federal level anymore, so that is at lower administrative levels. So initially was done every 5 years, this federal infrastructure plan. Then things got a bit delayed and disrupted due to reunification. So the next one was then 2003, and this one was reviewed in 2010, and the next one we expect to be this year. The 2003 methodology, I must say, was very much based on, let's say, 1980s methodology. It wasn't very much, or 90s, early 90s, updated. So what you can see in our report is really outdated methodology for Germany, but they have improved, I can tell you. Doing the whole federal planning takes about 4 years or more. So from the start of, this is the new federal infrastructure plan, we develop a methodology, until it's being decided, it's quite a long time. One of the reasons is that it is actually rather large, because this time, for example, more than 1,800 road projects, 428 rail and 46 waterway projects have to be appraised. I don't know how many the Department for Transport appraises each year, but it's quite a lot. So you can imagine that developing the methodology, applying it to this amount of projects is quite an effort. So how did it work this time? So initially they developed the concept, then they developed forecasts and scenarios, how the development would go, which were the basis for the appraisal of project proposals, which then, after the appraisal, go into a ministerial draft plan, which is then decided by Parliament, or first in Cabinet and then by Parliament. Now, the thing is that they made a big effort this time to involve the public. Because in previous times, you often had the problem that projects were proposed or went into legislation which had a high public resistance. So to avoid that, they said, we're going to try to involve the public early on, So they had planned for quite a lot of participation and consultation events. Now, I've translated the slides except for the little boxes, so there's still the German letters, the umlauts, was just too much work. So you can see that the public was involved by associations and even citizens from the start, from the development of the concept, in the project proposals, in commenting on the draft methodology, and there will also be public consultation, information events once the ministerial draft plan is out. It will even be on public display for comments. This has led to quite some positive feedback, for example, from NGOs, from industrial organizations on the level of involvement. Nonetheless, it didn't stop this huge number of project proposals. But actually, these project proposals can come from any organization. So for roads, I'm just looking. No, that wasn't in there. For roads, only the federal states can propose projects. But people can propose road projects to the federal states. So a lot of associations, for example, BUND, the German environmental non-governmental organization, proposed alternative projects if they thought that a big project was being proposed as particularly environmentally detrimental. So that's why there's such a high number of proposals. Any citizen can propose a rail project. So they initially had 1,000 rail project proposals. We narrowed it down to 428. And for waterways, I think it's only the administrative level. So quite a lot of possibility to influence this procedure. Now, once they've got the project proposal and applications, they did an initial screening or sifting to say, well, some of them we need more information, some of them fall out. And some of them need to be considered as alternatives or as a bundle of projects. So I did this first. Then with the traffic forecasts and scenarios, they go into the appraisal itself, which has 4 elements: the monetary cost-benefit analysis, an environmental assessment, a spatial assessment, and an urban assessment, which is then aggregated to an overall report for each project. But there will also be, together what they want to invest into maintenance, an overall assessment of the network impacts of the proposed plan. So that is maybe something new, that you will have a strategic environmental assessment and assessment, for example, of the total CO2 effects and other effects at the plan and network. So, as I said, public participation, quality assurance go throughout. There were also some fundamental changes in methodology between 2003 and 2015. You will be surprised to hear that up to 2003 they still used the fixed matrix. So they have moved on with time. And now don't use a fixed matrix anymore. There are improved interfaces, but the model is still done by modeling by consultants. There's no German measurement transport model. So it's still a black box. But they introduced an independent coordinator, professor from Weimar, but he's also in PTV, consultant, who did not bid for the modeling. So how independent is that, you can ask. I know him, I think he's quite independent, so that's quite good, to ensure that there's some consistency. And they changed the economic appraisal philosophy, again, maybe surprising. Until 2003, there was not a welfare-based or consumer surplus measure was called resource consumption approach. Cost-benefit analysis was only looking at the use of resources, not the consumer benefits or consumer surplus. This has now changed, and due to technical reasons which had to do with the modeling, it's not like the rule of the half calculation, where they say they call it implicit benefits. Kainagel did this and has also published it, I think, at the Hart conference, how they do this. The result is pretty much the same as the rule of the half. It's just technically done differently. So, quite a few elements of the proposed methodology have also been updated. Maybe there are a few innovations which are of interest here. The first one is the UK already has this risk premium, but Germany is now introducing it. It also wants to do sensitivity tests on infrastructure construction and maintenance costs. It's not clear whether they will do this on the forecast results, the traffic forecast. I'm not sure at the moment. The user benefits, as I said, are now explicit and implicit. So to kind of adjust to the requirements internationally, or international standards. They've updated the values of travel time savings both for passenger as well as freight. These are now distance and purpose dependent. For freight, that includes logistics and capital costs, not only the driver's wages. And there will be a sensitivity test for small travel time saving influence. Up to 2003, Germany just cut off at a threshold, I think, of 5 minutes and said every time saving below that is valued at 0, which was heavily criticized. It's academically. I'm too slow, huh? I've lost power. Sorry. I didn't do anything, did I? The conceptual phase started in 2011, so that was a little bit before the big protests on effectively 11 happened. But there is a very strong citizens movement on all levels in Germany anyway. So they had protests against other projects before, but also a strong tradition of environmental organizations. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a change in generation in the ministry. And that might have still been under the left-wing Green government. So the Greens were in power, I think, I'm not 100% sure, when this was starting to develop. Okay, we're back. Where was I? This slide seems to be secret. Okay, so updated values and sensitivity tests. Now, traffic safety, they didn't, because of the resource consumption approach, they didn't have a value of a statistical life or human suffering. That's now included. What might be interesting is that under the production losses, they also have a value for unpaid labor, so for housewives and others, which might be a bit different. Environmental impacts, they include life cycle emissions now and updated the values for air pollution. They're proposing an impact pathway approach for noise and avoidance costs for non-urban sensitive areas. They had a non-urban or non-residential noise in 2003 as well, so it's different from the UK. They also include a new transport reliability assessment, which is based on the standard deviation to travel time. So quite a few new elements, updated elements in the cost-benefit analysis itself. The other elements are non-monetary, so 3 non-monetary elements. The first one is an environmental appraisal. That was already there in 2003. It has been a little bit developed. First of all, there's now a plausibility check on applications or proposals. And there will be this full environmental report for the whole plan. Otherwise, it's a standard approach to environmental risk assessment where you look at environmental capital and environmental risk, overlay it and get some kind of matrix of severity. This is then reported in environmental dossiers, which summarize the results. They also take out the CBA results on environment. You see the color coding, typical thing that you do in the dossiers, and a map, which shows you the influence. This is being published with each project, so you can look it up as a citizen when the draft plan is laid out. The spatial analysis, the background to that is, in German law, there is a necessity for the federal government to make sure that there are, let's say, at least roughly equal living conditions across the country. So that is basic right in Germany. So people have the right in the north, the south, east and west to have a similar access to similar living conditions everywhere. So what is looked at is to what extent does the federal infrastructure plan contribute to this goal? So as you said before, transport not necessarily, the policy doesn't necessarily produce equity, but it can change it. It has an influence on equity. It can make it worse or can make it better. The elements are that they say there are spatial differences and deficits in some areas of the country who have less connectivity to central places. So for every geography student here, central place theory. And there are also differences in regional accessibility at the regional level. This basically looks just at times from a region to the next hub, etc. It's then weighted basically with a population index, let's say how many people are affected through regional development potential. So some of you might know that Germany has a declining population, but not in every part. So some are growing, some are declining more. So they use this to overlay this. And this ends up in regional impact points for relations and for regions. When the projects are evaluated, the points they get are added up for affecting or significantly improving situations. So if they contribute, for example, to better connectivity, they get higher points. Then there is an urban development appraisal, in addition, particularly for bypasses. where the argument is that if you build a bypass, you can use the new kind of space, inner urban space, to redevelop and make it nicer and put cycle lanes in, etc. So they look if links where the traffic impact change is more than 10%, how big could this contribution be for this link? So can it improve the road environment for other users? Does it change accessibility in urban regions? And is there some potential for a restoration of facades, for example, to make it a whole nicer environment? And this is then summarized on a 6-point scale. So now we've got these 4 elements. How do they bring them together? Well, basically, the whole process is that the priority is now on maintenance and keeping up what is there, because Germany already has a pretty good road network and networks, but the money for maintaining it is very tight, maybe like everywhere in the world. You build, but you don't maintain. So they now say the first thing is we have to determine how much we need to keep it up. And then we have a strategic prioritization between the modes, where it's determined from the project proposal how much of the funding goes into road, rail, and waterways. And now we go into each project within each mode and give it a classification where it's the highest necessity, whether it's of high necessity, of some necessity, or not necessary at all. And then these rankings, and sorry, I didn't have time to translate this, I'll mix with the different outcomes of the different elements. So you have to have always a high cost-benefit score. But if your project also has a high, spatial analysis, you go up the ranking, basically, into a higher class. If it has poor environmental standards, it can drop down. So there is a procedure which describes how these projects are being classified based on these 4 elements. So you can classify projects up or down, but the necessity is in every case that the cost-benefit benefit-cost ratio, sorry, is above 1. So, conclusions. Strength is probably strong public involvement, the necessity for institutional cooperation, which can kind of iron out the worst mistakes. But the application and sifting process can still be improved. There are still way too many projects, it's more like a wish list. What is good is that there are some network concepts for rail, but this is lacking for road to start with. But project interdependencies will be looked at the project level. Improvements have been done in the scenario and traffic forecast development, but a lot of associations, in particular environmental ones, still think it's probably too optimistic. Because the initial demand scenarios are without capacity constraints, which is then used as the without case as well. So it's a bit of a problem here, in particular if you look at the declining population. Oh, one thing, Germany uses a discount rate of 1.7 now proposed, very low. They used to have 3.5, now 1.7, due to this declining population and other factors. The economic appraisal methodology is probably in line with international standards, more or less. I think what is probably different is the formalized incorporation of non-monetary elements. So it's not an appraisal summary table left to the decision maker, but some form of formalized method. It doesn't go as far as, for example, the Irish secondary road network evaluation, which we did a few years ago, where the MCA was used. Because the MCA weights were basically from the administration, which could be questionable. They don't want this. So what could be lessons? Maybe some points for discussion. Is there something to learn for the localization and devolution agenda? How to deal with regions? How could it work when in the UK more and more powers are devolved to local areas? Do we then also get this wish list problem? Or like, I just read it a few days ago, your proposal to have some strategic regional priorities which have to be national, which have to be shown. Or could we have something where we give the money just to the regions, pork barrel politics like in the US? And the question here, how do we deal with non-monetary criteria? Should there be a more formalized approach? Or should we attempt to get more into CBA, which is probably the British approach, as much as possible into the CBA? Is there a necessity for a strategic network development at the national level? Does it work at the moment with individual project proposal, or is it maybe better, as in Germany, to at least have a national plan? Can we go for stronger public involvement as well here? Can we learn from this? And Germany struck out the basically economic impacts from the CBA methodology after 2003. Putting them in Britain, is that a step backward? So I want to end with that. Just leave it open for discussion.
Let's do just 5 minutes of questions so we finish plus 7.
Or did I look?
No. So let's do questions.
Your slides give me the impression that all this is about major projects, apart from the maintenance. But surely we should be thinking, before contemplating major projects, are we making the best use of what we've got? And there are lots of opportunities for reforming the user movement through roads, for example. I would personally suggest low and probably four speed limits, but there are many others. And in the rail, which I know much less about, there are many opportunities for increasing capacity without major infrastructure. So this does seem to me, the first bit we should be, before looking at anything which involves major infrastructure, looking at things which do not, and implementing them.
Two things. First, this is national planning, so it's probably some of what you say is in Germany done at local and federal level, federal state level. But I agree with you that this doesn't, for example, include policy measures. So it's a network analysis purely based on infrastructure policy. It does not include an assessment, how would this change if we had road user pricing. It does not include different speed limits or any speed limits on the motorways at all. What it does allow, and the environmental NGO has done a little bit in that sense, they have proposed small-scale alternative solutions with the federal, so they send the proposals which are small-scale, so small infrastructure improvements, to compete with the large-scale proposals from the federal state. So any citizen can basically suggest, okay, I think this huge-scale new autobahn is oversized. I can suggest something smaller at the infrastructure level. Not so much, as you said, as a policy level. That is, I don't know any country at the moment that does this way, and that's certainly a lack.
Indeed. I thought one of the strong points probably was this four-element approach: CBA, environmental assessment, spatial planning, and local governance. how did that work in practice? And because this is also something that other countries would also like to achieve.
I can only say, or I can say a bit better for the environmental one from 2003. So the National Environmental Agency did these appraisals together with the federal ministry. And every project basically in its dossier had an evaluation. If the environmental impacts were particularly high, it wasn't necessarily rejected, but it got a special planning mandate. So it couldn't go ahead until these considerations were taken into account and mitigation measures planned, which might mean that additional costs have been taken into account, an additional premium for dealing with environmental concerns. In practice, there's probably still quite a lot of behind-the-scenes shuffling.
So who coordinates this, or is it a four-headed committee?
So the appraisal itself are done, basically coordinated by the ministry, by the technocrats. Then they make their draft proposal with all the appraised project, and then it goes to the cabinet first and the parliamentarians, and the federal states. And the federal states then might say, oh, I don't like this main thing. For political reasons, I want to have this project up and another down. At the moment, there's a bit of suspicion that the current Minister of Transport, who's from Bavaria, pushes a lot of Bavarian projects up, but this has to be proven. So I didn't say this in public. So there is still policy influence, yes. Probably no political decision making can exclude. When I was in the US a few months ago, they were surprised that the federal government can actually prescribe any CBA. Their federal state would make it. They do them at the federal state level, but not for the money they get from the government.
Actually, the last one, there's quite a low CBA threshold in one. What difference does that make to the project?
Close to none, because the chances to get funded, I think, from the last one was somewhere around 7. Never get funded, or definitely very, very high. It does have a bit of a planning implication because, as I said, the corridor might have to be, for planning purposes, kept for a potential road or rail development. But in practice, the one is not really that relevant. It's basically, when we look afterwards, how many projects actually got into the funding. So you've got the lists by federal states and the money each federal state gets, and then you have the cutoff.
Okay. Final question, or should we wrap it up there? Let's leave it there. We have 2 minutes to 7. Good timing. Thank you very much.